Good morning. If I've not met you, my name's Gary, lead pastor here at Legacy. So glad you could join us today, especially those online, also those online, especially those online. We're glad you're here. We are in a series, Facing Giants, and I want us to jump right in. We have a lot of ground to cover, but before we do, I want to give you an opportunity to be the hands and feet of Jesus. We have two opportunities in the lobby today. One of them is one of them is Feed One. We just finished this, hosted the 3-on-3 tournament. Okay, slow down, Gary. We just hosted the 3-on-3 tournament. It was amazing. I'll reference that in a moment. I mean, it was, and all of the proceeds went to Feed One. It's a feeding initiative for at-risk kids globally, and it's through Convoy of Hope. And in the lobby today, we want to partner with that effort from the 3-on-3 tournament. If you'd like to be a part of that, stop in the lobby. Denise will be there. A representative will be there. And we'll give you some information on that. Chris Finch, come on up for a second. Also, there's an opportunity to host a student from South Korea, July 19th through August 8th. What's that?
You can even have two.
Yeah.
There's two students.
Two?
Yeah.
Okay. Or you could host two.
Two. One
wow.
or two.
Okay.
Up to you.
One or two. This is Chris Finch, everybody, right here. And yeah, and you guys have been doing this for how many years? A lot of years.
Since Lily was a baby, so probably about 14, 15 years.
14, 15 years. They bring students in from South Korea, and you kind of give us a quick rundown of what.
Yeah, it's a 3-week program, last 2 weeks of July, first week of August. The kids come from South Korea, middle schoolers, high schoolers. And they're here to learn English, learn American culture, most important. It's a mission trip that you don't have to get on a plane for. We've got folks coming in. Some of them are believers. Some of them just know they're coming to a church. They're going to be getting Bible classes. They're going to be staying with a Christian family. And when we put those things together, God works and lives are changed. And it's been an amazing experience every time we get to do it.
July 19th through August 8th. Chris is going to be in the lobby. If you want more information about that, to stretch your summer a little bit, it would be awesome.
And try some kimchi if you never have.
And I can't even say that. But yeah, see Chris in the lobby. Thanks, Chris. Give him a hand. Thanks, brother. Kimchi, I can say that. Come on. I can say that. So today, if you're taking notes, you write these words out. The message title is Audacious Faith, but it could also be called Crazy Faith. It could also be called Terrifying Faith. Like terrifying faith. You're going to do something, step out into something, and it just scares. It's frightening. All right, it's frightening. Sort of a passage that, kind of a launching passage for this message is Hebrews 11:1. Faith shows the reality. Faith is the confidence of what we hope for will actually happen. It gives us assurance about things we cannot see. Another translation says it this way: faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not yet seen. Not yet seen. If you want a definition of faith, a good working definition of faith, there it is. It's the confidence of what we hope for, evidence of things we cannot see. So, today's my birthday. Okay. I'm just going to say it. I'm going to get it out there. I don't say that. I've not said that for 7 years, and we didn't even have a church 7 years ago. So there, right? So it doesn't happen on Sunday very often, but it happened today. And so that, right? But what happens is as you approach the weekend, then you start thinking about, reflecting back about when you grew up. And especially the years I started pondering was like the schooling years, like from, like 5 years of age all the way up through high school. And what was going on in culture during, say, during the 60s, like through the, the first part of the 80s. the history of the United States at that time, what was kind of going on, it was the climax and the end of the civil rights movement, the escalation and ending of the Vietnam War was going on, the drama of a generational revolt with its sexual freedoms and use of drugs. I mean, that was going on back then. It's going on. The continuation of the Cold War. The economy was prosperous, though we were headed for, in about 69 to 70, a recession and a depression because of the recession. American society was polarized by a Vietnam War. At that time, anti-war and anti-draft protests were going on. All I remember about that time was watching a movie with my family. I was just a little guy, and I just remember this boy was getting drafted. He was getting drafted. He was on a bus being taken with his friend. He didn't want to go, right? And I remember seeing that, and I was like, and I went to the bathroom and started sobbing, just bawling like, I'm going to get drafted. I was 9 years old. So that was happening. The seizure of the American embassy, growing sense of the Watergate thing was going on, the gross misconduct at the highest levels of government, that was going on. So there was a national unease at that time, at that place. As a young boy, I do remember us reciting the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag without really any controversy or question. In fact, I remember saying the Little League Pledge. The Little League Pledge. I trust in God, I love my country, and will respect its laws. I will play fair and strive to win, but win or lose, I'll always do my best. Come on. I still remember my Little League Pledge. Come on. So, I trust in God. I love my country, right? So that you just said those things. You just said those things. Meanwhile, in that cultural moment, in the small church that I grew up in Southern California, there was an elderly woman by the name of Caroline Anderson. She's with Jesus now. We'd call her today a high-capacity volunteer. She led this. She not only during the week I'd see her was always cleaning the church. That was just she loved to come out and offer help and clean. She'd vacuum and whatever. She'd also cook at camp. She was a camp cook. But this one thing that she did very regularly was, remember the days, some of you might remember the days where there was Sunday school was at 9:45. First of all, Sunday school, right? Sunday school at 9:45, and then the regular service started at 11. Anybody remember that service schedule? It was like on every, anyways, 3 of us, all right? So 9:45, 11. And 9:45, we'd all gather in the main auditorium, and Caroline Anderson would get up on the stage with her soprano, warbly voice, and she would lead us in some singing. And then she would tell a little snippet of a story and some exciting things coming up for kids. And then she would send us out to our Sunday school class, right? And while we're leaving for our Sunday school class, she would lead us in the song, "To Sunday School I Always Go." That's the weekly rule. Whenever I am out to kids, I always shout, "Hey, come and go with me to Sunday school, fa la 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 la." That's how the song went. And we thought it was cool. And then we'd go up to the Sunday school class, the wing just upstairs, and there was another high-capacity volunteer that was there waiting. And that person would have a flannel graph ready to tell us Bible stories and share the message of Jesus. And that's kind of how our Sundays went. And 9-year-old Gary was in the room learning, growing, being exposed to the Word of God through prayer and song. And then midweek, there were another couple volunteers, both by the name of Larry, interestingly, Larry Thompson, Larry Roach, in a class that was something like a Boy Scouts or Royal Rangers. And it was in those classes we learned how to make a pine wood derby, a pine wood car. Come on, anybody remember pine wood derby? Yeah, right? Pine wood derby, you do that, and then, or you shellac the church bulletin because it had an autumn scene on there. Shellac the church bulletin onto a piece of wood, and that was Mom's Mother's Day gift. I don't think she has any of them left, but that's what I remember shellacking. Isn't that what it's called? Shellac varnishing, right? So, but all the while we're learning Bible stories, we're learning the things of God, how to be a man of God, what it meant to, right? And these were people that God was using not only to instill the hope and message of Jesus into a young boy, but they were answering the call of God on their life. They were answering, responding to, that was their yes. At some point, they had a conversation with the Lord, right? They said, yes, I'll do that. Yes, I'll be a part of. Yes, I'll serve. There were meetings that took place at that church. That we're going to have Sunday school, and Caroline said, I'll do that. And, the Larry brothers, I mean, they weren't brothers, but Larry said, yeah, we'll do that. And it was this, people were responding. And I recognized something as I was going back and thinking about this. I'm standing right here today on the shoulders of those people that said yes to Jesus, that instilled in me, that responded, that instilled in me a love and a passion for the things of God. They said yes. That church, that building, I remember going there for the first time. I remember the age, 9 years old, because I'm exactly 9 years older than my little sister, and we carried her in on a little carrier, right? She was just a newborn baby. I don't know who built the building. I don't know how it got there, but it was just there. It was a place that we could all walk into, sit on nice pews. Pews, right? We sit on the pews and a nice comfortable seat and hear the message of hope and hear worship and experience a church environment. It's a brand new experience for me. I don't know, there were meetings. Somebody in the church, the people got together, they rallied, said, we need to build a building. They put, right? And you see where this is going. Somebody, and I'm standing today, and some of you might have the same type of story. You walked in when you met Christ, when you said yes to Jesus, probably was in a church building, probably was in a facility, in a place where you heard the gospel for the first time, or a friend invited you into a space where you heard the message of hope. Somebody met somewhere, somebody made a sacrifice, and we're all here today in this cultural moment standing on the shoulders of people who pass the baton to us. Isn't that awesome to think about? I'm standing on some shoulders right here. Regardless of what was going on in culture, that's where I heard the gospel. Again, I had no idea who put the building up. No idea the people that sacrificed to make that happen. But I was privy to those meetings and the messages that were there. So we have a challenge, the challenge ahead of us today as we're talking about facing giants. And really this is your mission and my mission, should you choose to accept it. Our mission is to make sure we make room and make way for the generation that is coming behind us. They're coming behind us. I see a little baby here, a little Enzo, just little ones, right? Youngsters, right here, youth, and right the next generation. Sadly, and not to be an alarmist or to drive us down a rabbit hole, where culture is today versus when I was a kid. The kind of gift we're passing on to the next generation, it looks kind of grim, doesn't it? A divided nation where, even the Pledge of Allegiance is under question, even standing for the Star-Spangled Banner, the national anthem, is something that's questioned. Anti-God, anti-Bible, anti-truth. There's a vacuum of biblical morality, the sexualization of everything, and that it's readily available. sexual confusion, gender dysphoria, anxiety, depression, suicide. There's national and global upheaval. It's a nation, we're a nation that's anything but one nation under God. It's the kind of nation we're handing on. I've got this week, we're blessed, all families in town, passing, I got all 7 grandkids. And I get to say to them before I go see Jesus, here you go. I think I want to have something more to say than here you go, good luck with that. Right? When I thought about it biblically, it reminded me that we resemble as a nation the city of Jerusalem during the time of Nehemiah. I'm going to go through this quickly, but it's important we hear and see the similarity. It's a passage in the Old Testament. He was a man, was Nehemiah, that was a cupbearer to the king. And this position in the palace was actually one of notoriety and nobility and one of he had influence, prestige. And his job was, a cupbearer to the king, you pre-tested the wine before the king did, and if you died, you did your job. That was his job. And he had prestige because he was allowed access. He was in the courts of the king. He was right there, had full access to the king, so he was trusted. He gets word, does Nehemiah, who is, by the way, he's an exile, an Israelite, who is living in Persia under the King Artaxerxes, and who he's serving as the cupbearer for. But he gets a report on the condition of his homeland, Jerusalem, Israel, specifically Jerusalem. And here's how the report comes to him, and I want us to capture his response. In late autumn, this is Nehemiah 1:1-4, in the month of Kislev, in the 20th year of King Artaxerxes' reign, I was at the fortress of Susa. Hanani, one of my brothers, came to visit me with some other men who had just arrived from Judah, from Jerusalem and Israel. I asked them about the Jews who had returned there from captivity and about how things were going in Jerusalem. They said to me, things are not going well for those who returned to the province of Judah. They're in great trouble and disgrace. The walls of Jerusalem have been torn down and the gates have been destroyed by fire. Nehemiah, when I heard this, I sat down and wept. In fact, for days I mourned, fasted, and prayed to the God of heaven. When I heard this, I sat down and I wept for days, and I mourned and I fasted and I prayed to the God of heaven. The problem of a city whose walls have been torn down is, especially for these exiles who returned back to Jerusalem, to the motherland, is they needed protection. Even though they rebuilt the temple, they still needed protection. They were defenseless against enemies, weather, wild animals, opposing people, and other opponents that could easily enter and cause great trouble to the people. So you in those moments, you try to create a normalcy. Imagine your family, right? Try to create a normalcy. Everything's fine. Go to sleep. But are we safe? Well, go to sleep. I'm going to keep an eye. It reminds me of going to Tuolumne Meadows in 5 miles in at Yosemite. Anybody ever been there? 5 miles into Yosemite, we backpack in. Patty and I did this with another couple in our mid-20s. And it's the last time we did this. Because the moment we put our fire out, we heard rumbling in the camp. And for some reason, I just did not feel safe behind the thin veneer of a pub tent. You hear this noise, and I was talking to Dave, his wife were in the other pub tent. You hear that? Yes. Bear in the camp, he would say, bear. He was brave. He would jump out and chase the bear away. I would look out like this. You couldn't sleep every night in that life. 6 nights we were there. Every night. Yes, we hung the food. Yes, all that. We still lost a bag of food. Every night. Couldn't sleep. Felt vulnerable. You couldn't rest. And in times of antiquity, you were a nation like Israel in this moment, or Jerusalem in this moment, a city. You were a blight, a shame. You were barely recognized as a city. And Nehemiah's response when I heard the condition of the walls, I sat down and I wept for days. Why? Because it wrecked him. It burdened him. It drove him to his knees to fast and to pray. And as I read that about Nehemiah and the way he responded, it caused me to reflect on my response in the current condition and climate and culture that we live in today. I felt a little bit convicted, a lot convicted, in our response as a church. And without being dramatic, I want to state the obvious. As a nation, our walls are down. And I will just say this. In November, it's going to take more than a man in an Oval Office to make a difference. We need a move of God. In fact, the Bible says salvation belongs to our God, to him who sits on the throne. And under the Lamb, salvation belongs to our God. To him who sits on the throne, praise and honor and glory and thanks, honor and power and strength be to our God forever and ever. It's going to take more than a man in an office. We hear about it daily, what's going on in our culture. You see it, you sense it, with the ripple effect, again, of this being an election year. We're sitting on a powder keg, and you can kind of feel the rumbling, can't you? Lines are drawn, opinions are abundant. All the uncertainty, division, animosity. We're a nation whose walls have been disseminated. That's how I see this, the similarity to us and Jerusalem. We're vulnerable. We're defenseless against enemy attack. And I'm talking spiritually. This message, working through this, it's a unique cultural moment that Jesus has placed us in. What will we do with it? Will we as the church be ready, available for the task at hand? Like the church was, I'll just say this, like the church was for me when I was a kid. Where are the Carolines? Where are the Larrys? They're going to lead those young men, those boys. Where are the men of God that are going to rise up? Where are the women of God that are going to rise up and make a way? Who will be here to lead the next generation? Who will provide the shoulders for the next generation to stand on? Somebody maybe one day saying your name. When Nehemiah got the report of his city, he wept and he fasted and he cried out to God. And with that as the backdrop, I want to quickly tell our story as a church and what brings us to this moment right here. And I'm saying this, like some of you might have heard, you probably have heard this. You've heard me talk about this. You've been around Legacy any amount of time. You've heard me say some of these things over and over, in fact. But there's a lot of new people. Like yesterday, 16 in our growth track class went through that are saying, yes, we want to be a part of this faith community. And a lot of new people, a lot of new faces. And so I thought, you know what, today would be a good day to just kind of get us all on the same page. We're going to conclude our time together. I'm going to give you a heads up, okay? We're going to conclude our time together. Those that are comfortable. Some of you have cards to turn in today, commitment cards for the building project. Can drop those here. More than that, though, I want us to pray together. And so I'm going to ask you when you do that later on to bring the card here and then just find a spot up here to stand and just collectively to come to the front and we're going to pray together. We're going to lift up our voice and our hearts to God and pray for the next generation. So that's just a little heads up. So why take time for this? To create energy, synergy, a unity of thought and purpose as we move forward. Our story really began with, number one, a place of promise. That we began to, we began to, 6.5 years ago, we had a place, had a space. Very beginning of Legacy Church, we trusted God to lead us. We've grown, we've been established in the community, we've moved out into the heart of our city to do everything in our power to make Jesus famous. Not legacy, Jesus famous. We've never been about a space necessarily. We really haven't had to worry about a space until we needed to. In early 2025, next year, the city of Liberty Lake will occupy this facility. You are now sitting in the library, the future library. Unlike the library, you don't have to be quiet. You can say, yeah, preach it, brother. Amen. Shout it. Come on. No, don't do that. Never mind. We know that Jesus has led us from this place that we needed to find a home. We needed to find a home. The way even moving from this place, the way that this building was purchased, we put our best foot forward. God was saying, I'm moving you out of here. I'm moving you to a new spot, a new place, a place of promise. We sensed that he had a place of promise for us, a promised future, a home, a land to establish permanence in the city, and that's huge. So we found this property a block to the west of us here, and we've talked about that. We've shown the pictures. We believe God brought us to this piece of property. There were 2 parcels that were for sale, and we had no idea that there was a 3rd parcel that was not for sale that tied the 3 together. Long story short, it was what confirmed to us that this was a place of promise, because that 3rd parcel belonged to somebody who attends Legacy Church. And that just over and over we realized, God, you brought us back here. We are absolutely convinced it's our future home. So place of promise. We're on it. We have the dirt. Secondly, the second sort of statement that we've talked about is let's never forget our why. In fact, the better said, it should be said this way: if we lose our why, we'll lose our way. So we never want to lose our why. Legacy exists. Here's our why. Legacy exists to see futures rewritten. From Legacy Church's inception, we sensed God wanted to establish this place as a church where life transformation could take place unapologetically. Life transformation. And the best possible chance of doing that is an environment where we could just keep our arrows focused outward into community, creating opportunities for people to experience Jesus in life-changing ways. There's a great snapshot of this in Acts chapter 2, and all the believers met together in one place. This is the early church, and shared everything they had. They sold their property and possessions and shared the money with those in need. They worshiped together at the temple each day, met in homes for the Lord's Supper, and they shared their meals with great joy and generosity, all while praising God and enjoying the goodwill of all the people. Of all the people. In other words, they were doing all the ministry. Lives were being met. They were glorifying God. People's lives were being met. The church was being met. Communities' needs were being met. And they were worshiping God. And what happened? And he added to that day, the Lord added to their fellowship those who were being saved. Those who were being saved. And the Lord added to their number, to their fellowship, those who were being saved. That was their why. They were fulfilling their why they existed, why they were there. And the Lord added to their number. Here's the third one. The third one is this: what is has to bother you. What is has to bother you. And I want to go back to Nehemiah for a moment and sort of land here for a second. Nehemiah saw Jerusalem, that the walls were down, or he heard the report, I should say, heard the report, the walls were down, and when he heard the report, it broke him. He wept, he cried, he fasted, he prayed, he called down the greatness of God. And I want you to listen to his prayer for a moment and hear sort of the focus of his prayer. Here it is. He said, Lord, let your ear be attentive and your eyes open to hear the prayer of your servant, that I now pray before you day and night for the people of Israel. Your servants, confessing the sins of the people of Israel, which they have sinned against you. Is that what it says? Which they have sinned against you. Those icky sinners, those terrible people. No, what was Nehemiah praying? He says, no, Lord, which we have sinned against you. He said, even I and my father's house have sinned. We have acted very corruptly against you and have not kept the commandments, the statutes, and the rules that you commanded your servant Moses. He includes himself in the sin, in the confession, in the sins of the people. He says, we. He owns it. And my question today is, real quickly, what if we prayed that way? What if we shared the responsibility of the sin of the nation that we live in? How many know it's very easy to point our fingers? How many know it's easy to sit on a seat of judgment and look at the failure and the brokenness and the vitriol and the animosity and all of the division and division and the godlessness and say, oh man, if we just had better leaders. They just need to bring the Bible back into schools. Right? It's like somehow that makes us maybe feel better. Nehemiah said, no, we, Lord, my sin, the sin, forgive us. Forgive us. Forgive us. We have sinned. We are corrupt. We are deserving of hell. So we cry out to you for forgiveness. If my people who are called by my name would humble themselves and pray, God said, would humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways. He said, then will I hear from heaven. Then will I forgive their sin. Then will I heal their land. He said, if my people would pray. He didn't say, if my people would complain. Oh, man, that was tweetable right there. If my people would pray. Nehemiah was not content, though, to stop with prayer. He couldn't leave well enough alone. He couldn't just pray and do nothing. He couldn't toss up just a prayer for God and that was it. Check it out, Nehemiah 2. Early the following spring, the month of Nisan, during the 20th year of King Artaxerxes' reign, I was, Nehemiah said, serving the king his wine. Pre-tested wine. I had never before appeared sad in his presence. So the king asked me, why are you looking so sad? You don't look sick to me. You must be deeply troubled. Pause there for a minute. You must be deeply troubled. What's on Nehemiah's heart? What's on Nehemiah's heart is Jerusalem. He's vexed. He's in turmoil because he knows to bring this up to King Artaxerxes. He knows history, and King Artaxerxes, we don't see this here, but has already stopped building of the wall in Jerusalem in days gone by. He shut it down the first time. And now here is a servant, an Israelite, an exile, wanting to say to him why he knew it was even a risk to go before the king and look sad. He said, you don't look sick to me. The king said, you must be deeply troubled. What does Nehemiah say? Then I was terrified. I was terrified, but I replied. I love that. Then I was terrified, but I replied, long live the king. How can I not be sad? For the city where my ancestors are buried is in ruins, and the gates have been destroyed by fire. And then you kind of do this. How can I not be sad? My city's in ruins. The wall that you stopped, right? You stopped, it's in ruins. And the king asked, I love this answer, so how can I help you? With a prayer to the God of heaven, I love this. Like, man, before I said any more, I just prayed. He said, I replied, if it pleases the king, and if you are pleased with me, your servant, send me to Judah to rebuild the city where my ancestors are buried. Let me just pause here for a moment. There's something to be said about a terrified faith that is willing to make a stand and move forward even when it feels way over your head. Even when the odds are, even when it's risky. This was very risky for Nehemiah. Terrified faith. I reply, let's go on. The king, with the queen sitting beside him, asked, oh, go back one slide. I'm sorry, Sarah. I replied, if it please the king, if you're pleased with me, your servant, send me to Judah to rebuild the city where my ancestors are buried. And the king, with the queen sitting beside him, asked, so how long are you going to be gone? Pass me another drink. You almost get that impression. How long are you be gone and when are you going to be back? And after I told him how long I'd be gone, the king agreed to my request. Let's stop there. I don't have time to pack all this, the inspiration that's packed into this passage. But other than this, to say he appeared sad, he was terrified, he asked anyway, he was emboldened by the Lord, and he told the king, the city's in ruins and the gates are on fire. And the response of the king had to have shocked him. What can I do for you? Here's the point. It's the bother effect. What bothered Nehemiah so much that he was willing to say something, to take a risk, to start something unprecedented, to see futures rewritten? And you read the rest of it. Go home, read it. Read it this week. You'd love. It's an amazing account, an amazing journey. There's so much more that happens. And so the point for what is it for Legacy Church? What is legacy has to bother us. It has to bother us into prayer. It has to bother us into action. In fact, my fear is, as pastor of Legacy Church, it says more about us if we do nothing. So what is the thing that God is calling you to do? What is the thing, here it is, that frightens you? What is the thing that makes you afraid when you think about stepping out and doing that? It might not even be like, well, I'm going to work for the church. I'm not talking about that. But for God, what is God calling you? What is that He's laid on your heart? I say this all the time. 2 most important days in your life: the day you were born and the day you discover why. The eternal purpose for your life. It's like, man, I know I've got this. There's a gift. There's something I know that God's calling me to do. I sense it. I feel it. I'm trying to find clarity. Or you know what it is and you're afraid. And there's something, there's a void, there's a vacuum because of fear. And I love Nehemiah's, I was terrified. But I said to the king, can I give you my terrified moment? Here it is. It's on my birthday, so you have to have grace. Putting a building up a block away. The chance that it could fail. It's frightening. Terrifying. But we're going to move forward. Why? Is it because my name's it? No, it has nothing to do with my name. There's a generation that's waiting for us to respond. There's a generation of people, there's a generation that's waiting for us, listen, to say, yes, God. We're going to step into this moment in faith. We're going to face this giant in faith, and we're going to trust God for a future. And guess what? We need a miracle. We need a miracle. Nehemiah, I was terrified, but I asked the king anyways. I could lose my job, but I asked him anyways. Come on. I leaned into the moment Like somebody did for me when our family walked into the church as a little boy and sat down. Somebody faced a giant somewhere so that I could come in and hear the gospel. I believe a church in the heart of our city is going to say, it's going to reveal God's blessing. It's going to serve as a sign to our spiritual enemies. And it's going to show the people around us in this city, in this region, that God is with his people. Those are, by the way, those things right there, those are symbols of when you had a wall built around your city, it revealed that God's blessing was on that city. You've held a wall around your city, it served as a sign to the spiritual enemies. And it showed that God was with his people. That's what Nehemiah hoped for, and that's why he wanted to build that wall. Here's the last thing quickly. When I looked out at the 3-on-3 tournament, it became very obvious to me, the 3-on-3 tournament, we don't have room for everybody. It's kind of warm in here right now, isn't it? I'm feeling, is it just the topic here that I'm feeling? Yeah, it's kind of warm. We don't have room for everybody. That's the fourth one. We don't have room. And there's this, I want you to look at this picture. It's a little blurry. Look up there. I was driving away, had to run, grab something here at the church. It was about 1 o'clock, and then right in the middle, and there was a surge at the 3-on-3 tournament. We stopped counting at about 1,300 people that showed up for the 3-on-3 tournament. And you could argue, yes, well, they were here for basketball. It was a crowd gathered, yes, for an event. And when crowds gathered, I don't know, Jesus had a little bit of he had a thought about how they were to be seen. Look at Matthew 9. And Jesus went throughout all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom and healing every disease and every affliction. And when he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. And he said to his disciples, what'd he say? The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore, pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest. Go back to the picture. Oh, it's already there. The harvest is plentiful. The laborers are few. Why is it in a city like Liberty Lake do we have one church that has ever dared to pour concrete in a community? It's kind of back up in this neighborhood up here. The harvest is plentiful. Regardless of the reasons, so here it is. I have a feeling the crowd that Jesus saw looked a lot like the crowd that we saw. And regardless of the reason the crowds came to see Jesus, make no mistake, not everyone was ready to give their lives to Christ. Not why they were there, not everyone. Not everyone was ready. Some wanted a show. Some wanted to see a miracle. Some thought he was a good teacher, wanted a good teaching. Some thought he was, some tried the church. They'd been burnt out, so they were checking out this guy to see if there was something to it. But when Jesus saw the crowds, they were like sheep without a shepherd, and he had compassion on them. And I kind of think that's how he expects us to see the crowds. So let that be our motivation. We don't have room for them. 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 So we have to build a church. And it's a giant. And I'm going to borrow Nehemiah's line. It's terrifying. But we're moving forward in faith. Amen. We're moving forward in faith. We're moving forward in faith. Come on. Let's stand together. Let's stand together. We're going to pray. Here's how we're going to close today. This is an invitation of solidarity. It's this. The band's going to lead us in a song. You are more than able. And what I'd love, if you're comfortable to do this, is to gather here at the front, or just get in as close as you can, or step out in the aisle, come forward, and to pray. I want to pray over us. I want us to lift one voice to the Lord that just simply says this: God, it's frightening, but we're going to do this. So to step forward, here's what it signifies to the Lord. I'm not looking to see who's coming, who's not. It just signifies to the Lord, God, I'm in. Whatever you want, maybe you're not even clear on what he wants you to do. Maybe you're not even clear on what the call of God is on your life. Just step out, come. Say, God, I'm willing. I'm available. I'm available to whatever it is you have for me in the days ahead. I want to be obedient to what it is you're calling me to do. I want to release us from this is a backdoor way of getting us to give money. Gosh. That was gosh, by the way. Lord. We have to have our eyes. I don't want us to come and look at his hand. Like, God, okay, I'm going to give this, but what are you going to give to me? I want to look at his face. God, we need you in this moment. We need you in this moment, God. We cannot do this. This is a giant. We need your help. And so to come forward in this moment, you've got a card, drop it here, right here in the front, and then just find a spot to stand. We're going to stand, we're going to sing this song of worship, and then I'm going to pray over us and send us out of here. Can we do that together? Send us out of here. Don't hesitate. Don't wait. The leaders lead. Come on, jump out. Let's come forward. Let's sing. Let's worship as the band leads us. Let's do it.